Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Farzy Show, presented by Steven Singer of Steven Singer Jewelers. My name is Mark Farzetta. Let me just say, tailgating Jim Gardner's last newscast is the most Philadelphia thing ever. I love you, Philadelphia. Never, ever change. In case you missed it, yes, Jim Gardner retired from the 11 o'clock news about like a year ago or so. And then he stayed on to the 6 o'clock news. Now he's retired from the 6 o'clock news. Now he's retired. He's done. His last night was his last night. Like 46 years broadcasting. God bless him. Good on him, man. He was the best. He was the absolute best. Hands down, bar none, the absolute best. And in the most Philly thing ever, he walks into the parking lot of 6ABC. And what does he have? He has a group of tailgaters tailgating his final newscast. I mentioned before that this Eagles team is a team I'll tell my grandkids about, Jim Gardner's last broadcast being tailgated is something that I will absolutely tell my grandkids about. It reminds me, a while ago, people did a parody of like Philadelphia Eagle fans, and one of the things they said, it was like one of them Real Men of Genius commercials, if you remember that ad campaign. I think it was Miller. I think it was Miller Beer that did it. Or no, Budweiser. It was Budweiser. Budweiser presents Real Men of Geniuses. Or Real Men of Genius. You know, that whole thing? And they said, if the Philadelphia fans, real fans of genius, right? And they did that. And they said, Philadelphia fan, if the dog show came to town, you'd tailgate it. And I was like, oh, that's funny. We probably would. And then we actually tailgate Jim Gardner's last broadcast. So, you know what? I think that is a beautiful thing. Sixers roll to a victory last night over the Detroit Pistons, as expected. We'll get to that. Joel Embiid's performance in that game, as well as Tobias Harris, as well as what really sucks for the Sixers right now. At the time that they're hot, they win their 6th straight last night. At the time that they're hot, everybody else is hot. The Knicks had won, I think, 7 in a row up until last night. They lost to the Toronto Raptors. You had Pascal Siakam dropped 52 on the Knicks at the Garden last night. The Cavs have won 5 in a row, I believe it is now. And then you also have, here it is, 5 in a row for the Cavs. The Nets have won 7 in a row, and the Sixers have won 6 in a row. So in the 3, 4, and 5 seeds right now in the Eastern Conference, and this is way early to talk about seeds, but just talking about those 3, 4, and 5 guys with the Sixers being there at number 5, those are the hottest teams in the NBA right now, as fate would have it, with the Sixers rattling off 6 in a row. Next up, they got the Clippers. And then, of course, on Christmas Day, they face the New York Knickerbockers. So that's who they got coming up on Christmas Day. 8 Pro Bowl selections, ladies and gentlemen. 8 Pro Bowl selections for your Philadelphia Eagles. I know you're excited. I'm excited. There are snubs, unfortunately, when it comes to the Eagles, and they have 8 Pro Bowlers, and they're still snubs. Now, I was thinking about this a couple of weeks ago. There are guys on this, and the number one guy that jumps out to me is Javon Hargrave. He's got 10 sacks from the defensive tackle position. That's insane. And not in the Pro Bowl? No? Here are your Pro Bowlers, courtesy of our great team at our social media department. Here's congrats to the Eagles Pro Bowlers: A.J. Brown, Landon Dickerson, Jalen Hurts, Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, Hassan Reddick, Darius Slay, and Miles Sanders. Good for Miles Sanders. Good for Darius Slay. And how about 3/5 of your offensive line? 3/5 of your offensive line are Pro Bowlers. Arguably, and this is where I'll say they're the 2 biggest snubs, in my opinion. Without question, it's Javon Hargrave. The season he has had has been incredible. You look at the way he has played the DT position before the influx of talent here with Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, and while Jordan Davis was out, he has really helped hold down the fort. For him not to be there is a bush league. Hassan Reddick certainly earned. Love it. It should be on there. That's not another 10 plus sack season for him. All the credit in the world to him. But when you look at the defensive tackle getting those sack numbers, that's pretty special, especially when you talk about a team that doesn't blitz a lot. When you talk about, and we'll hear from Jonathan Gannon a little bit later in the show on how that pass rush is getting home a lot more than what we're used to seeing. we'll see that. We'll hear that. And his explanation is a pretty good team explanation for both sides, or both position groups, defensive backs and defensive line, helping each other out to get that many sacks, which is why you see a guy like Darius Slay on there. You can certainly make an argument that James Bradbury deserves to be on there. When you talk about the two best-rated corners in the NFL, in Darius Slay and James Bradbury, they both deserve to be on there. But I was thinking about this a while back. I'm like, the Eagles are going to have a lot of Pro Bowlers this year. I didn't think it would be the most in the NFL, but I thought it had a really good chance of being the most in the NFL. And there should still be more. At this point, the Eagles were competing with themselves to make the Pro Bowl roster. The Eagles, without question, were competing with themselves. Bradbury, you can certainly make a great argument for that he should be on there. You could certainly make a good argument that C.D. Deuce, Charles Gardner-Johnson, should be on there, still leading the NFL in interceptions with 6, and he's not on the Pro Bowl roster. I understand he's hurt. He's on IR, but he can certainly make the argument that he should be in there. So you can talk about Bradbury being a snub. You can talk about Charles Gardner-Johnson being a snub. Certainly Javon Hargrave being a snub. And then Jordan Mailata not making the Pro Bowl. The left tackle for your most likely MVP leader, at least at the time that he was injured, in Jalen Hurts, and having a 1,000-yard rusher in Miles Sanders already, doesn't get there. One of the number one offenses in the NFL all season long. Number one offense in the NFL. One of the number one offenses all season long, you can say that. And Jordan Mailata, the left tackle, doesn't make it there. Little bit of a snub right there. It was going to be stiff competition, not with other teams and players, but your own players, the Philadelphia Eagles. That's how good the Eagles are. Their best competition isn't from outside the team. Their best competition is inside the NovaCare complex for making the Pro Bowl. Ridiculous. Yes, ridiculous. The big snubs, without question, I think. Hargrave's number 1. I think Bradbury's number 2. I think C.D. Deuce, I think they look at the injury and they say thanks, but no thanks. He's out, even though he has the most interceptions. And then Jordan Mailata, I'm amazed. Still, with 3/5 of your offensive line making, and I thought Jordan Mailata was going to be the one to actually be on there as well. Not the case, unfortunately. So good on the Eagles once again for all the guys that they were able to get into that Pro Bowl. And Jason Kelce will just, no kidding, as expected. Good for him. Good to see that. Really, I have been pretty blown away with what we've been able to see for the most part. I mean, offensively, I expected with A.J. Brown, once that addition was made, I expected offensively there to be some pretty good things happening with the Philadelphia Eagles in their offense. Defensively, I didn't know what to expect. Like I had a lot more confidence in Jalen Hurts taking a big step forward in his second year as a starter than I did as Jonathan Gannon having a top-ranked defense with these players. And Hassan Reddick coming in here obviously is a great thing. Getting C.D. Deuce in here for the time that you had him, that was a great thing. Bringing in the influx of talent that I mentioned already on the defensive line, that was great. But going into the season, all right, Hassan Reddick, James Bradbury, all right, that's great. Kazir White, that's great as well. But how's Jonathan Gannon going to be using these guys? Is he just going to be waiting for the quarterback to make a mistake, or is he going to try to force the quarterback into making a mistake? Is he going to have these guys be aggressive? What's he going to do with this defensive line? How is Jonathan Gannon going to use all these beautiful new tools in his tool shed? They have the most sacks in the NFL. So although they might not be a result of old school blitzing, Jim Johnson blitzing or anything like that, might be more of a result of rushing 5, only rushing 4, running games in the line of scrimmage, whatever it might be, his guys are getting home, and they have more sacks than anyone in the NFL. I did not think that was going to be a true statement. If I was going to say that this year, if I told you last year, hey, next year I'm going to say that, I'd be like, I'm probably lying to you. If I was going to tell you that they lead the NFL in takeaways, no, impossible. You're talking about a bottom feeder team last year in sacks, a bottom feeder team last year in takeaways, and now they're the best in the NFL. How does that happen? Influx of talent is the number one thing that jumps to mind. Jonathan Gannon actually using them properly, using them in a way that actually benefits everybody. And it's not just the influx of talent on that defensive line. It's not just that. It's also the fact that you got James Bradbury and Darius Slay holding down the fort on the outside. So yesterday, the coordinators addressed the media. By the way, RJ Ochoa is going to be joining us a little bit later to talk about Eagles-Cowboys week. And RJ is a very unique perspective of this. From bloggingtheboys.com, RJ Ochoa, unique perspective. Because the word he uses to describe this Eagles-Cowboys matchup is one I've never really heard before. When describing an Eagles-Cowboys match, we're used to words like, oh, this tenacious rivalry, this hard-nosed, smash-mouth, oh, this intense rivalry. He's got a different way to explain it, so we'll hear from him in just a second. But going into this Cowboys game, your defensive and offensive coordinator spoke yesterday to the media. And one of the things Johnny Gannon was asked about was the sack total that they have this year. And Jonathan Gannon was asked about the influx of talent, and he was also asked about the scheme or philosophy. What is helping this Eagles defense get to the quarterback? Last year was a big problem. This year, not a problem at all. Here's Jonathan Gannon on how they've had so much success in their pass rush.
You know, it's always a priority of ours philosophically to affect the quarterback, and you can do that a lot of different ways. But we came out of last year knowing that, you know, we gotta do a little bit better in this area. And it's not a winning stat to me, but you do want to affect the quarterback. So I think that, you know, being the second year in the system for those guys, I think that adding some pieces, getting BG back, adding Haas, you know, I mean, you know, it's the players are making a bunch of plays, you know, and I think also what goes a little bit people overlook is the back end, because rush and cover and rush, that does make a difference.
You know, you can always talk to defensive linemen, and you can always talk to cornerbacks. And whenever we've had any of those guys on the show, Milton Williams, when he was on with us some months ago, when we had Steven Nelson last year on the show, you know, we always ask these questions about who helps who more. The defensive line, do they help the defensive backs, or the defensive backs help the defensive line? Who's the bigger cog in that wheel? After yesterday, I was careful with that word. And really it's a balance. And man, it only makes sense that your defensive line, with the upgrades Howie Roseman made in the offseason, the edge rusher that he brought in with Son Reddick, the fact that you have 6 different players with at least 3 sacks on the season, I think it only makes sense that goes hand in hand with how James Bradbury and how Darius Slay have played this season. And Bradbury and Slay at different parts of the year. I know Bradbury mentioned it after the Giants game where he was beat. He mentioned after the game, he was beat by his receiver. And he turned around and be like, oh, Daniel Jones is down. I don't got to cover that long. I got Jalen Hargrave getting after the quarterback. I got Son Reddick getting after quarterback. I got Josh Sweat having himself a hell of a season getting after the quarterback. All these guys are having breakout years. And it feels like last year, Hargrave started out the season great, led defensive tackles in sacks and was doing a phenomenal job. This year, it seems like he has really stretched it out through the season. He's really spread the love throughout the season of how well he's been able to perform, how well he has done this season. But man, watching this defensive unit play the way they've played this year has been great. And I have been critical and you know, critiques where critiques are due. Criticism where criticism is due in the direction of Jonathan Gannon. But this year, I know everyone will reference the fact that he doesn't have a scheme. He did walk that back and said weeks later, of course I have a scheme, but overall there's a philosophy. Yes, there's a philosophy. Last year, I felt like you didn't have the defensive talent with you in general to be as aggressive as you could maybe be this year. And the question this year was going to be whether or not it was going to be a matter of scheme with this defense improving, or whether or not it was just going to be the fact that you upgraded your talent. From what I have seen, there's one major change, other than the obvious, which is different guys wearing an Eagles jersey, better guys wearing an Eagles jersey. The improvement of TJ Edwards shouldn't be lost either. I think he has taken this and flourished in this defense. As an undrafted linebacker, I think he's done a wonderful job. There was a transition there even towards the end of last year between Alex Singleton to him. And Singleton, of course, went out to the Denver Broncos. TJ Edwards stays here and has been doing a great job this year as the Eagles middle linebacker. So watching all that and then watching guys come in, The only thing I've really noticed in terms of a schematic change is the amount of games it seems like they're running defensively. When I see Josh Sweat come in off the end, loop around his tackle on the old ET there, and go up the middle of the field through the middle of the line of scrimmage to get to the quarterback, I'm like, I don't really remember seeing too many of those last year. I don't even really remember seeing too many of those at the start of this season. And now it's a different case. Guys are getting home on those types of plays. I don't know. I saw the most against Chicago Bears last week. I don't know if it was something Justin Fields was showing them and they felt they could get away with that. I don't know if it was something on the Cowboys offensive line, Bears offensive line that the Eagles saw that they could exploit, but whatever it was working. They were getting home. So yes, there has been upgrades to the positions with different guys, better guys, more talented guys wearing the Eagles jersey. But schematically, philosophically, it feels as if Jonathan Gannon has incorporated something a little bit different into his defensive philosophy this year that we haven't seen before. 55 sacks, not too shabby when you talk about this Philadelphia Eagles defensive line and what they've been able to do all around this season. So you couple that with two best corners in football. Unfortunately, one's not being named to the Pro Bowl, at least not yet. Yeah, you're going to have a pretty good pass rush right there. So that was Jonathan Gannon. I am shocked. I am legitimately shocked that this has not picked up more steam. And I'm going to play it again for you. I played it yesterday. I'm going to play it again. Not as long, but folks, please help me. I'm asking you guys, please help me. All right. We need to make this. I'm going to hold Nick Sirianni to this. And I'm also going to hold Shane Steichen to this. Miles Sanders needs more carries than your running back. And if you see it trending in the wrong direction, like it was against Chicago Bears, where in the third quarter, you had Jalen Hurts with 11 rushes in the game, and you had your number one running back with only 4. If that's the case, if you see it trending in that direction, start handing the ball off. No RPOs. I'm not talking about RPOs. I'm not talking about zone reads. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you say the words into your headset. We're going to go with a running play here. And then you hand the ball off. This is going to be an obvious handoff to Miles Sanders. Just hand it off, okay? Nick Sirianni 2 days ago talking about Miles Sanders not having enough carries. Here's Nick Sirianni on that.
Yeah, I got to give him just some called runs, and Shane and I, that's our job, is just to make sure we get him some called runs that he.
Brilliant. I just got to get him some called runs. Yes, okay. I'm going to hold you to that, please. Okay, all right. Because one of the things that has come up over the last 2 years here in Nick Sirianni is, well, we get a lot of our runs out of the RPO. Yes, okay. Take the P part of it, take the O part of it, throw it out the window, just run. All right. Run pass option. Yep. Nope. We're going to throw it out the window. Just run the ball. Because that's how you're going to keep Jalen Hurts clean. And more importantly, that's how you're going to keep Jalen Hurts healthy. And this is not a knock on how they've been using Jalen Hurts. I support how they use Jalen Hurts. It's a matter of how often they use Jalen Hurts. I don't have a problem with him scrambling. I don't have a problem with the RPO. I don't have a problem with that play. I don't have a problem with an athletic quarterback and using every ounce of his athletic ability. Just like I don't have a problem with him using his arm as well as he does, using his smarts as well as they have this year, and all the studying Jalen Hurts has done away from the football field to make sure that when he's on the football field, he's just reacting with the right reaction, not overthinking, not making a stupid play. I think all that's great. How they've been using him is great. How often they use his athletic ability is something that they need to make sure they pull the reins back on just a little bit. And you can do that by handing the ball to a pretty damn good running back behind a pretty awesome offensive line. Let's see here. All right. I got 3 Pro Bowlers on that offensive line with at least 1 snub. Okay. And I got a Pro Bowl running back as well. It might work. So that was Nick Sirianni 2 days ago. Here's Shane Steichen on the run game. And this is where I'm kind of, wait a minute, hold on. What was that? Here's Shane Steichen yesterday addressing the media.
Yeah, there's times where you have just called runs and run it, and then you also have times where, when the zone read stuff is working really well, that you want to take advantage of that. And so, when you have the element of a zone read, obviously you're +1 in the run game, so that gives you the advantage there in the run game a lot of times.
The RPO, you're having success in it, so you want to take advantage of that. Okay, that's what scares me. So, okay, just like you got to protect Jalen Hurts from himself at times, who's protecting Shane Steichen from calling too many of those plays? Because I think going into it, as it was described to us before the season started, during training camp, it was that Nick Sirianni was going to be involved in the game plan, and he was going to draw up the game plan with the help of his coaches, obviously. But on game day, Shane Steichen's the one on the headset with Jalen Hurts calling the plays. Nick Sirianni deferred play calling to Shane Steichen to make him more available for everything else in the football game and everything else with his team. Okay, that's great. Generally speaking, I prefer there only being one person on headset with the quarterback calling plays. I think it just helps save time when you're talking about a play clock. I think Andy Reid got into trouble with that a couple of times, more than a couple of times here in Philadelphia. Call the play to the offensive coordinator, then the offensive coordinator calls the play to the quarterback. This cuts out the middleman. So I always think it's more efficient. But if Shane Steichen is saying they're having success in the RPO game, then, okay, at what point do you say, this is a little much, we're venturing into dangerous territory, we're having success running the football, why not just run the football? I understand RPO and a regular old HB dive are different, very different, but if you're also trying not to overuse your quarterback, if you're trying not to abuse the physical talents of your quarterback and you want to keep him protected, then why am I looking and seeing 11 runs to 4? In the third quarter of that football game. I should not see that. At the end of the game, 17 runs to 11. I shouldn't see that. He was a little bit more. Shane Steichen yesterday said that there were, I think he said 6 design run plays for Jalen Hurts. Nick Sirianni said there was 1 called, so I'm trying to figure out what the difference is between the two in terms of how they see it. Like you actually checked down to those 6, or excuse me, those other 5, where was the 1 called run play one that actually you called yourself, or were the 5 other ones that Jalen Hurts called? Like at the time of the snap, what was the decision? I think if you're seeing it get out of hand like you did against the Chicago Bears, you say to yourself, all right, he's been hit enough. Let's make sure that he's not getting hit more. I think that's where the coaches need to get involved. I don't have a problem with Jalen Hurts running. I don't have a problem with the run pass option. I have a problem with how often you use it. And when you're using it and it's working, find something else that works. There is no excuse on this football team with 8 Pro Bowlers, 2 of them, by the way, direct weapons of your quarterback in A.J. Brown and Miles Sanders. There's no way you can't find something else to do that will work with A.J. Brown, Miles Sanders. Devontae Smith is pretty damn good as well. And my phone is not listening to me. Well, it's always listening. Miles Sanders, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, who's pretty damn good, and now you're getting Dallas Goedert back into the fold. Yeah, I would say there's another thing you could do besides an RPO. But if it's working, you want to stick with it. I get it. You're a versatile enough offense where you don't have to continue to put your quarterback out there in harm's way. That is a real thing, by the way. And it's not like, because he's a running quarterback, or because he has the ability to run, he's going to get hurt. Now, I don't necessarily believe in that, but I do believe in putting your quarterback at risk and trying to manage that risk. That's why when I make the argument about how many quarterback sneaks the Eagles run, well, how many quarterbacks have been hurt on a quarterback sneak? I don't care. I don't want to set a trend. I don't want to start a trend. Is it safer for your quarterback to hand the ball to a running back? Or is it safer for your quarterback to put his head down and try to break through the line of scrimmage? Yeah, it's safer just to hand it to the running back. It protects your quarterback that way. Who's a little bit more important to this team? Is it Jalen Hurts or Miles Sanders? And Miles Sanders, that's his job as a running back. They're like, hey, here's a football. Go get in harm's way. Like, that's literally what he does. But for a quarterback, you can manage that risk a little bit more. That's why I don't like seeing how many carries he has had throughout this season. And it's one of those things that there's this internal clock and it just starts getting closer and closer to a little alarm going off. I remember the preseason game that Carson Wentz got hurt in, and I remember thinking, why does Doug Peterson still have this guy out there? What's going on? He's taking some hits here. He took another hit. He took another hit. Took another hit. Broken rib. It just seems like there should be that clock in the coach's head too, saying, you know what? It feels like it's been a bit much. It feels like it's been a bit much with Miles Sanders, or excuse me, with Jalen Hurts. Maybe protect him. Maybe just protect him a little bit. All right, so help me out one more time, folks. I know Gardner Minshew is going to present a whole different scheme here with the Eagles, and you'll probably see your running backs actually act like running backs for the vast majority of the game. But just help me out, okay? Just let's hold Nick Sirianni to this.
Yeah, you know, I got to give him just some called runs, and Shane and I, that's our job, is just to make.
Yeah, just some called runs. Just again, I won't get tired of that. The idea of a Pro Bowl 1,000-yard rusher in your backfield. Someone's asking you the question, you think you should run the ball? Yeah, I just got to call runs. Brilliant. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Pots and pans. Let me tell you about the 76ers, ladies and gentlemen. Nice little win for them last night over the Detroit Pistons. You love to see it. They win their 6th in a row. Joel Embiid had himself a fine night in the game, 22 points. Oh, not 30. Wah! But Embiid was 6 for 16 from the floor, 10 for 11 from the charity stripe, 22 points, 10 rebounds, another double-double, and a Sixers win. Also last night, James Harden, 8 assists, 15 points. Tobias Harris, 2 for 4 from beyond the arc, 6 of 9, nice from the floor, and he had 17 points as well. Something else that was nice, George Niang, I won't necessarily say he got it going, shooting 3 of 11 from beyond the arc, but he did hit 3 threes in the game, had 11 points, and Montrezl Harrell had himself a nice game, one of his best as a Sixer, as a matter of fact, game. He had 10 minutes played, but he also had 10 points in those 10 minutes. So that was a fine night from the 76ers. Like I said earlier, they got the Clippers coming to town tomorrow night for a 7 o'clock tip-off. Sixers will go for their 7th win in a row. I did get a little bit more news on, according to Jeff Passan, it was pretty much exactly what we saw when it comes to the Carlos Correa thing that we mentioned yesterday, that literally broke about 20 minutes before we actually did our live show. And it was just as cut and dry as we thought. According to Jeff Passan, Carlos Correa goes through the physical. I guess they assume everything's going to go right. They schedule the press conference to announce Carlos Correa as a San Francisco Giant. Meanwhile, the San Francisco Giants get the physical results back, and they look at it and they go, we're not so sure about, I believe it was 13 years, 350 million. We're not so sure about that. And Carlos Correa's like, what? Scott Boras is like, nope. Hey, Mets. Beep, bop, bop, beep, boop, boop, bop. Steve Cohen. Hey, Steve. That offer on the table? Yeah. Throw in a Picasso. Steve Cohen's an art collector, for people that don't know. Throw in a Picasso. All right, I'll throw in a Picasso in 12 years, $315 million. Okay. Carlos Correa with the New York Mets. Every time something like that goes down, where there's a little bit of controversy, there's a little bit of question, there's a little bit of whatever, I always say, well, what if it happened here? What if it happened in Philadelphia? Could you imagine for a second, and let me knock on wood, could you imagine for a second if Trey Turner was more or less announced? Could you imagine if the press conference was scheduled to introduce Trey Turner as a member of the Phillies? And it comes out that John Middleton, the Buck cousins, they looked at the physical and they said to themselves, and Dave Dombrowski looked at the physical and went, oh, that. Now, let me just be clear. That we don't know yet. Whatever that is on the physical, we don't know yet. The Giants, of course, are tight-lipped due to HIPAA laws and all that stuff. So imagine for a second that it comes out that all of a sudden we wake up one morning and Trey Turner is a Met. or actually the non-division rival, even the Giants. Just not a Philly is really all that matters. He's not a Philly after we all thought he was a Philly. We're all celebrating. We're all getting ready to watch press conference. He's going to be a Philly. And then he's not a Philly. Could you imagine if that happened here? The venom in this city and the you better be right to Phillies ownership and the Phillies front office about whatever that thing was you saw in the physical. Like, it better, like, what it better be on the physical is like, well, tomorrow half of his body is going to fall off. He's just going to be half a guy. He's just going to be split right down through the nose, through the central torso, and he's just going to be half a guy playing shortstop. That better be what the medical report shows if it means he's not going to be playing on the Phillies tomorrow. Good God, you better be right. Like, even to balk at it, even to raise it to the attention of Scott Boras and be like, yeah, we're not so sure about that thing. Like, he had hiccups twice last year. We're not so sure about. Like, it better not be that. It better be like, well, the next time he throws a baseball, all his fingers are going to go with the ball. Like, what? Even to bring it up, you better be right on whatever the hell that is. And I know in Philly, our heads would be exploding. Our heads would be exploding with the way that went down. Imagine if that happened here. Oh, man. Oh, that would be that'd be bad. That'd be bad. That'd be really bad here in Philadelphia. Thank God it didn't. Thank God it didn't. Trey Turner was announced. The Trey Turner's press conference. He likes being here. He's friends with Bryce Harper and Kevin Long. Everything's great. Everything's awesome. Everything's wonderful. All right, we're going to get RJ Ochoa going up in just a second. By the way, Cowboys news. Micah Parsons is under the weather. He's got a little health issues, a little illness, right? So he's been held out of practice. When I saw that, my honest-to-God first thought was the Cowboys looked at the Eagles with Jalen Hurts and were like, two could play this game. Like, if your star quarterback isn't going to be playing, well, maybe our star linebacker is not going to be playing either. Game plan around that. And then I thought, no one's doing that. But it popped into my brain. So we'll get RJ Ochoa's take on Micah Parsons, how serious that is, whether or not he feels like Parsons is going to be playing in this game come Saturday at 4:25. And then also, last thing in football before we get to this conversation with RJ Ochoa, Nick Foles has been announced the starter for the rest of the season, last 3 games of the year for the Indianapolis Colts, courtesy of Jeff Saturday. Nick Foles at the helm. And I believe it's a Monday night game going up against still San Diego, the LA Chargers. So look forward to seeing BDN back out there slinging it. Let me tell you about my man, Steven Singer of Steven Singer Jewelers, the other corner of 8th and Walnut, right there on Jewelers Row. For over 40 years, Steven's been in the love business in Philadelphia, helping Philadelphia fall in love and get engaged. Steven Singer Jewelers, the other corner of 8th and Walnut, right there on Jewelers Row, home of the perfect price. Now, you guys hear all the time, you see all the time, the billboards that say, I hate Steven Singer. Well, Steven, you know who says that? Other jewelers say that because they don't offer the perfect price. They offer a big price, and then they try to knock it down a couple of bucks just to make you feel like I feel like you won. But really, you know what's happened? You still got had. Not at Steven Singer Jewelers, though, because they offer the perfect price. You don't have to worry about negotiating. You don't have to worry about haggling. You don't have to worry, most importantly, if the person next to you is getting a better deal than you are, because they, too, are getting the perfect price. Online at IHateStevenSinger.com. Always fast and free shipping at IHateStevenSinger.com. Steven Singer Jewelers, one place, one price, the perfect price each and every day. Online at IHateStevenSinger.com. Without further ado, let's jump on the Roth and Orthopedics guest line and talk to our friend. I really do enjoy talking to this guy, RJ Ochoa. Really knows his stuff. And I feel like as a Cowboys writer, he's fair and balanced. That's what he is, fair and balanced. Let's talk to RJ Ochoa on the Rothman Orthopedics guest line. Joining us right now on the Rothman Orthopedics guest line from Blogging the Boys. I will say this, we like this guy's takes because he's always real. He's never outlandish. Our man, RJ Ochoa, joining us from Blogging the Boys. What's going on there, RJ?
Not a whole lot. Quiet week. No big deal. Nothing crazy happening. Just Cowboys, Eagles in the most awkward possible way. Christmas and, figuring out what leg to put the pants on. first tomorrow morning.
Exactly. Before we get anything with Jalen Hurts or Gardner Minshew, how is the Dallas Cowboy community handling the devastating loss to Doug Peterson and the Jacksonville Jaguars? Is everybody okay? Is it extra added motivation? Are we still crying in our cowboy hats? What are we doing? What's going on down there in Big D?
Well, first of all, I haven't been on your show since the Houston Astros won the World Series. I'm obligated to say that. But I find it interesting how endeared Doug Peterson is to a team and an organization that fired him. You know what I mean? We love this guy, but just a few years ago, wanted him the hell out of here. It was a really crushing loss. In a literal sense. I mean, it's an AFC loss, right? So you can kind of talk yourself down there. But this had been this really tense, month where it's like every Cowboys, okay, they got the win. Are the Eagles going to slip up? Are they finally going to pick up some ground? So for it to happen to Doug Peterson of all people, I don't know if you know this, the Cowboys have never won in Jacksonville. That was only their second game there ever. Just kind of the way things work out, but they'll get to try again in 2030. So we're looking forward to that.
First off, kudos to get it in there for the Houston Astros. Congratulations to the people in Texas that are Astros fans. That looked like a bit of a rough loss. Now let's get down to this. The Jalen Hurts fiasco. Most of us here in Philadelphia think that if it was a playoff game, Jalen Hurts would be out there. Jalen Hurts would be playing. Jalen Hurts had a 68-yard strike to A.J. Brown down the sideline against the Bears after the injury took place. He did very well and all that. And Gardner Minshew is most likely, yes, going to be the starter there in Dallas. First up, what's the Dallas media making of either Hurts or Minshew getting the start in Dallas on Saturday?
So there are, as I see it, three elements that make this game awkward. There's the results from Sunday, Dallas losing and Philly winning. There's the Hurts injury, which is the most seismic, at least as it relates to the rest of the season and the playoffs. And then there's the fact that these two teams might meet in the playoffs, right? So there's all these like variables that you have to weigh. And so I think every Cowboys fan or Cowboys media member wants to take the game seriously, wants to believe this is kind of vintage Cowboys Eagles, Christmas Eve, Jeff Garcia going to Texas Stadium on Christmas Day and beating Dallas. That was one of my first Cowboys games ever. But it's hard. It's hard to ignore that. And it's hard to ignore not just that Philly is so close to kind of cementing their status in the playoff picture, but that Dallas is as well. They're kind of effectively the 5 seed. And so it's weird. I think, the way I've termed it this week, I think the financial value of the win is greater for the Eagles because there's nothing bigger than the division and the 1 seed. But I do think the Cowboys are playing for more pride. I mean, coming off the loss, you do want to stack yourself up. You didn't get to play these guys with Dak. The tables have kind of turned now. It's you against their backup. So you should kind of handle business. But again, then you kind of say, well, there's a lot of pressure. And then, well, there's not because, you could drop this game very easily and not really suffer much. They have not lost 2 games in a row this season. Obviously, the Eagles have not. So you do have that kind of going for you. But I think people that kind of in and out and feeling clunky or awkward is, I think, the best way to put it because of the particularly extenuating circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Now, there is an interesting thing here. Dallas could still win the number 1 spot in the NFC. I mean, a lot has to go right, including the Eagles lose out, which if the injury is legit to Jalen Hurts, I mean, it could happen. But there is still a little bit more at stake here. I mean, there is pride, but there is a shot here that Dallas gets the number 1 seed.
That's true. So Dallas would have to win out, Philly would have to lose out, and then the Cowboys would need 1 loss from both the Niners and the Vikings. So all that goes their way. And a partridge in a pear tree, right? Obligatory sort of Christmas comment. They're the 1 seed. They could also win the division and not be the 1 seed if they just get their end and Philly's end. What I think is interesting is Dallas plays on Thursday night next week. So obviously, I know Eagles fans will be paying attention. I know there's the tie scenario with Minnesota if they lose or win, whatever. But even if the Cowboys beat the Eagles and they don't get any help or whatever you want to call it, their game next Thursday is kind of meaningless. I mean, they do kind of have to play, right, because they, don't know if Philly would lose out. But Philly could put an end to it next Sunday against the Saints. And if that happened, they would lock Dallas into the 5 seed if Minnesota gets a win this week as well. Obviously, a lot of balls up in the air, but that's what makes it weird, and that's what makes it strange. And, you do start asking, okay, Micah's a little bit, tired. Do you rest Micah Parsons? Is it worth it? Do you let Micah go get his moment after his little comment about Jalen Hurts, but Hurts isn't playing? Like, you can talk yourself around in circles forever on this game.
Now, that's an interesting thing I want to tackle right now. No pun intended. Micah Parsons' comments. And is it Jalen Hurts or is it the system? Is it Jalen Hurts or is it the team? Well, the funny thing is, we just spent a week for the most part leading up to the Bears game talking about Micah Parsons' comments. And we're also talking about how Micah Parsons is wrong. What does he know? And now it's like, well, damn, I really hope he was right now. Because you want it to obviously be the team. So that's another rock in a hard place. Another awkward thing is that Micah Parsons, what the hell does he know about football? And now we're in a situation where it's like in Philadelphia, we're almost rooting for Micah Parsons to be right, that it isn't just all Jalen Hurts, that it is at least a lot of the team that will help this Eagles team, come out with a victory against the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange and awkward. Like I said, I can't recall any game, not just Cowboys-Eagles or Cowboys game, but any game that was this weird and diametrically opposing one another in so many particular senses. And so, like to your point, like if the Cowboys blow out the Minshew-led Eagles, are my mentions full of Eagles fans? Told y'all, Micah was so stupid. You know what I mean? Like, look how needed Jalen is. And so I do think it's strange. And I do look, if I'm being honest, I would love to see. I think the Cowboys win, and I mean, if it goes, and that's partly just going chalk, right? Dallas is favored, Minshew factor, whatever. I would love to see how Nick Sirianni would handle a world where, say, Dallas wins next Thursday night, and say New Orleans stun the Eagles. I would love to see that, like week 18. Oh man, Hurts may or may not be ready. He's got to come back. They got to lock up the 1 seed. But that's what this is about. This is a really. And we kind of talked about that, obviously leading up to the last Cowboys game. How good is this Cowboys team? Can they carry Cooper Rush? Are they going to be limited by him against these big, bad, mighty Philadelphia Eagles? And they were. Like, they made it a bit of a game in the second half, but they clearly had a glass ceiling. And so I sort of expect the same to be true the opposite direction.
Yeah, I know one thing that we're rooting here in Philadelphia, not just for an Eagles win, but, oh, wait, hold on. We beat their backup and they couldn't beat our backup. Like, that's kind of a storyline that we're getting into. When it comes to Parsons, though, how serious illness? You mentioned fatigue. You mentioned tired. What is the deal with him right now? Do you fully expect him to be playing in this game on Saturday?
Yeah, I think he'll play. I do think the Cowboys reckon that they can say what they want, right? Like, oh, we play to win. We could win the 1 seed, whatever. Like, we're all adults, right? Like, Santa's not real. He's not coming on Saturday night to people's houses. Just being cool. Unless he is. It's up to people. I mean, Micah's had a weird kind of little run here in December. The night the Cowboys hosted the Colts, the Thursday before that, Matt Judon did not have a sack for the Patriots. And so I wrote something at our site like, hey, this is Micah's moment. He can take over the lead in sacks. He can take over Defensive Player of the Year. That did happen, but just to Nick Bosa that week. He had 3 sacks against the Dolphins and has since kind of run away with the award. Micah finally got a sack last week against Trevor Lawrence. And it was a bit of a quiet game. He had the fumble recovery that everybody saw that Dallas couldn't capitalize on. 12 pressures, and so he was kind of back. But everything around him is either all on or not. And so he hasn't had those like super freak God mode, Super Saiyan Micah moments that we got so used to. And maybe that's just like, hey, turns out he can't be like the greatest defensive player in the world all of the time, which is new and uncharted territory for the Cowboys. But I'd say last week was an improvement from his performance against the Texans and the Colts, certainly.
All right. Now, looking at potentially the Jalen Hurts less Philadelphia Eagles and Gardner Minshew as their signal caller, what is it on this Eagles team that jumps out to you that said, okay, Jalen Hurts isn't in there. What else do we got to watch out for? I
mean, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are I'm definitely terrified of A.J. Brown. Like, as a human being, like, I feel like he could end my life. I might last like 10 more minutes against Devontae. Like, I'm not saying it would be pretty, but like, I feel just a hair less intimidated. And so I don't trust, I trust Trayvon Diggs with, basically my life in a football sense, but the Dallas Cowboys don't have much on the opposite side as far as starting corners are concerned. Anthony Brown was lost a few weeks ago. He was part of the famed Dak and Zeke draft class and it's kind of been overlooked and underrated a lot since then. But turns out he was kind of critical and kind of important. The Cowboys haven't found anybody. Last week, they relied on last year's second-round draft pick, Kelvin Joseph, and he just got destroyed. I mean, just got worked. Zay Jones had 3 touchdowns against the Cowboys. Kelvin got benched. And so they're really struggling. And so if you can't hang with Zay Jones, I mean, can you hang with Devontae Smith even for 10 minutes like me? I mean, so that's definitely what I'm most concerned about.
Okay. When it comes to the story surrounding Jalen Hurts, Is the Dallas media looking at Hurts right now as if this is more gamesmanship and the possibility that you even just pointed out of seeing the Cowboys down the line in the playoffs and the Cowboys seeing the Eagles? Is any of this at least tipping the scale at gamesmanship or legit injury when it comes to the Hurts injury right now? Is it legit, do you think, or do you think this is just a matter of not showing too much before the playoffs?
I mean, I certainly can't speak for everybody, but my own personal read on it is, and to be very clear, it's really unfortunate. I hate the oh, now we get their backup. Like, that's so stupid to me. Like, all injuries suck. Jalen, is the rightful MVP, I think, this season, the way once was in 2017. My dog is barking in agreement. His name is Bear, so he's really sore about the results from last week. But anyway, but being matter of fact, and I guess being blunt, it's one thing for the line on this game to shift, right? Okay, fine. That's a little bit weird, whatever. It's a whole another thing for me for the line on his MVP odds to shift. Because even if he had to miss one game, granted, it's a big game. Like, that's what's got a lot of us, I think, saying this definitely feels real. And again, that sounds like it's carrying hope. It's certainly not. I mean, it's just, looking at these cards and these variables the way that they are at this particular moment. So the fact that his MVP odds are so impacted, the fact that there has been all this well, it's not season ending, why are these words coming out of anybody's mouths? Like, it does feel, and I think from personal experience, whenever the Cowboys have had an injury, of course they're underselling the impact of it, and so it does kind of look and smell like that from the surface. Now, for the Eagles case and for all football fans' case, I hope that it's true. I hope that it's really not that bad. I hope he could play next week if he really had to, but it does seem maybe not like there's smoke, there's fire situation, but there's a lot of smoke and you're wondering what's going on underneath.
I am curious, going back to the loss in Jacksonville. I have never been a really big Mike McCarthy fan. What's the fan base right now? How they feel about their head coach?
I mean, I'll be honest, the fan base is broken. This is the most broken the Cowboys fan base has been in a long time. I think this past week has shown how fragile it can be. And I think that looking back on it, the demolition of the Vikings really warped what are not fair expectations of the Cowboys, but fair expectations of any football team, right? I mean, that the Eagles, when they struggled against the Colts, I'm sure that was a long week of what are you doing? This is so embarrassing, blah, blah, blah. And so is Mike McCarthy perfect? No. But I don't know if you're aware, the Cowboys have won double-digit games in back-to-back seasons for the first time since 1995 and 1996. They've secured a playoff berth in back-to-back seasons for the first time since 2006 and 2007. That's not to say build a statue, but it's to say this team has had a long-standing 15, 20, 25-year run of incompetence, and he has come and stabilized that within 3 years. I mean, his first opportunity to do those things, he did it. And again, make fun of them for holding on to Jason Garrett as long as they did, as much as you want. That's complete and total fair game. But I think he's such a meme and he's such a joke that I think people take that low hanging fruit and they don't recognize, the great job he's done. Will they win the Super Bowl? Probably not, because if you had to bet your mortgage on one team or the field, I think we would all take the field always. And so it's a very difficult thing to do. But he's getting them to a place as a franchise where they're consistently there. They're always hanging out. They're always a playoff team. And if you're there year in and year out, odds are, they're not a guarantee, but that eventually fate will probably smile upon you.
Speaking of that word, eventually, will Odell Beckham Jr. eventually be a Dallas Cowboy?
Maybe in 2023. I'm really happy this week. If I'm grateful for the loss, if anything, it's that it took away attention from that. That was, and I'll be honest with you, at first it was a lot of fun. It was really, I'm sure when you first met your wife, flirty. Oh, she texted me back. You know what I mean? It had that kind of energy. And so it really was fun. And that was kind of the Vikings win and Thanksgiving and all the good vibes. But it really just kind of wore on everybody. The same old thing. Well, no, we're not saying no. I know we signed T.Y. Hilton, but, watch. It's just, it seems a little bit silly at this point in time. And I give them a lot of credit for that, honestly. And I know that sounds silly. In the past, they would have just jumped at that. But they enjoyed the ride. They enjoyed the fun and the flirting. They assessed him medically, and he wasn't where they needed him to be, and they made an objective decision. They haven't been capable of that in a long time. They've always gotten emotionally caught up, and so I give them credit for learning to be adults. That's who the 2022 Cowboys are.
I love it. Well, hopefully they have a regression to adolescence for our sake here in Philadelphia on Saturday. What are you leaning towards as far as a prediction? You mentioned you think the Cowboys win this game. What are you leaning towards at the time we tape this on this Wednesday afternoon?
I think the Cowboys win. And again, I think it goes chalk. I could see it being somewhat close, but I could also see, and I really do say this not in a fun, trolly way, I could see the Cowboys like just routing them, right? Like a 30-13 win. And there's like look, we didn't need this win. We had 3 chances. Everybody was dealing with the shock of the Hurts thing, whatever. We got 2 at home. We got the motivation of beating the Saints because of the draft pick. Who cares? Let the Cowboys have their moment. And I could see Dallas kind of pounding their chest a little bit. And I honestly think, it benefits hear me out. I've explained this to some Eagles people this week and nobody agrees. I think it benefits the Eagles to lose this game in a weird way, because it motivates the Eagles to play next week against the Saints. You have to play unless the Cowboys lost to the Titans, obviously on Thursday night. But look, it's a good problem to have, to debate, like, should we rest? Should we take them off? Should we give them a week off, 2 weeks off to bye, whatever, blah, blah. But the hand for you is forced. If the Eagles lose this game and the Cowboys win next week on Thursday night, you have to beat the Titans. That means you technically only have one game, week 18, that is completely consequence-free. You have the bye week. I think that's best for everybody, because that would also mean that week 18 was meaningless for the Cowboys. I don't think you want 2 weeks of truly meaningless football. I understand it would be fun. You want the division, the caps, the T-shirts as soon as possible. But so because it makes sense for the NFL too, I don't think they want a dud Thursday night game. If you're a believer in conspiracy theories, I think the Cowboys get this one.
It's fascinating. I've never heard a Cowboys-Eagles game being described as awkward. Usually venomous, rivalry, something like that. How's it going to be? Awkward. It's going to be weird. Everyone's going to feel weird. It's going to be really weird. But it's
will you be upset if they lose? Like, will you be even 1%? You'll be annoyed at the Cowboys-Eagles part of it. But sure, from a competitive standpoint, I don't think you'll be impacted one way or another.
Tell me they lose this game right now without watching the game, and maybe a key fumble at the wrong moment, or a really bad play call, or a bad officiating call, whatever, something like that. But barring anything like that, yes, I will just be annoyed. I won't be outraged. They don't have their MVP quarterback caliber, and you agree, of course. But the thing that makes me come back down to earth, because my first thought when Hurts got injured was 50-13 Cowboys win this game somehow, right? But the more I think about it, and I try to be somewhat objective about it, or at least do an impersonation of someone who's objective, is the Cowboys or the Eagles have a really good defense. I understand the Cowboys do as well, but you're throwing into the 2 best corners in the NFL when you talk about James Bradbury, the year they're having, and Darius Slay, and you talk about this defensive line that they have bulked up, the way they've been playing. It's a lot to handle for Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, great players, obviously. And the dual threat you have at the running back position there. It is a good defense. They have forced turnovers. Cowboys have been right there forcing turnovers as well this year. So that, to me, might be the only equalizer when you talk about this game, is the turnover differential.
I agree with you entirely. And this was, if they meet in the divisional round, I don't know that I'll sleep. You know what I mean? That week, it'll be stressful and awful. But to me, it kind of feels like. You ever play like a video game and there's this super hard level that you just can't do it. You know what? I need to lower the setting. I need to lower it's on too hard, too difficult of a setting. I'm going to lower this setting. And I think there's like a natural setting lowering of the Eagles because, and that's not to say or at all imply that they don't care. They're not driven. I think that's not my point. But I think the nature of the awkwardness, I think the nature of losing Hurts, I think it's different. Like the stake, you cannot convince yourself the stakes are as high as they were a week ago. The stakes were higher against the lowly Chicago Bears than they will be this particular game. You got 3 strikes, to bring it back to the Astros Phillies. You're going to swing on the first one? No, you got 2 more to burn. That's just kind of the way it is.
Phenomenal. All right, and for the record, what is Houston, like 3 hours, 3.5 from Dallas? What's the distance there?
It is, but Texas is really big, and so I'm not originally from the DFW area. So I'm from South Texas, and just 90s kid. Time I grew up, it just worked out in my household. Cowboys, Astros. I'm a San Antonio Spurs fan, so I spread love all over the state.
Look at you.
And so it's an interesting dichotomy. I know in states like Pennsylvania, no, we don't do that. This is how we roll. Whatever. You're Penguins, you're Flyers, you're Pirates, you're Phillies. You got to be one or the other. So that's not how it works here.
Yeah, we see in Philadelphia, we can't stand on our tallest building and see Pittsburgh. We got mountains in the way. In Houston and Dallas and it's all flat. So you guys can say that you see cities from your, what's that? That's 18 hours away, but it's right there. No, I'm kidding. But I appreciate you, man. RJ, always great catching up with you. Thanks so much. Make sure you're reading RJ Ochoa stuff from bloggingtheboys.com. Appreciate you, RJ. Thanks very much.
Of course, man. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas to you as well, my friend. Thank you. By the way, my most profound apologies for letting, I don't know, I think false reports about allegedly no Santa Claus. Okay, unconfirmed. Per sources, there is a Santa Claus. All right, so how about that? There you go. Thanks to RJ Ochoa. I do thoroughly enjoy speaking to that man. A lot of fun in those conversations. We're going to jump right into the chat check. Ladies and gentlemen, let's jump into that check. It's chat check. See how you guys are doing today. Alyssa, good morning. Alyssa, nice to see you. Sean Gillespie, good morning. Cal Bundy. What's up, Cal? D-Law. Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence made it over Javon and Sweaty. Laugh out loud. Yeah, Dexter Lawrence only has 6.5 sacks this year. Bush League. Okay. Bush League. Trying to get more of the New York market, are ya? Ridiculous, if you ask me. Ridiculous. Who else we got here? Sean, hopefully no Eagles will actually play in the Pro Bowl. That's a fair point. Open up them slots for other people. Everyone's being nice. Everyone's saying hello. Oh, listen, Mark, that man's name is Chauncey. You're right. I'm sorry. I keep on saying Charles. You're right. Thank you. Chauncey. That's why I go CD Deuce. CD Deuce. Which sounds like a health problem. Kevin, hello. April, totally unrelated, but there's a kid whose name is Yam. And he made a spectacular interception last night in a bowl game. Dear Eagles, draft this kid when he's available. All right. I'll look into that one. Is it Northeast Sports? Any aced? Any assists? All right, I'm going to say Neast Sports. I'm going to assume Northeast Sports. You can get hurt within the pocket. That is true. We have nothing to prove on Saturday. Rest up Hurts. I'm not far off from that. Charles Adderley, what's going on? Good morning to you. Oh, that's very kind of you. Charles Adderley says, have a great and favorable holidays. Thank you, Charles Adderley. See, favorable is exactly what I would say a guy named Charles Adderley would say. Favorable. Have a favorable one. Charles, I just love the name, man. I love the name Charles Adderley because Mark Farzetta that name is so not Charles Adderley. I really admire things that are just not in my wheelhouse. So, Charles, thank you, and enjoy the beautiful Bahamas, my friend. Neast Sports, playoff time. They're not going to get off the RPO, and they shouldn't. It's been very successful mixing up runs. So that's where I'll disagree. They're good enough to where they don't have to be heavily dependent on it. I'm not saying get rid of it, but if you glance down and you see how many times you're putting your quarterback out there, because what is more dangerous? It's more dangerous to run and be fair game as opposed to being in the pocket and being able to get rid of the football in a timely manner. So I'd rather not put the running back out there or put the quarterback out there as many times as the Eagles have. But yes, I think you said earlier. Yes, you said earlier that the Eagles you could get hurt in the pocket. Absolutely true. It's not safe in the pocket either. But I do think that the quarterbacks are more protected in the pocket by rule. And when guys could take shots on you and put their whole body weight on you and all that stuff, I'd rather keep my quarterback away from that. Hurts is not a running quarterback. He runs, and throws, he's multi-dimensional. Yes. And that's why when I did say earlier, I was talking about the running aspect of his game. I did use the term running quarterback, but yes, he is more than that. When he is using the running portion of his quarterback abilities, would definitely love for the Eagles to maybe take that away just a little bit. Alyssa, I get nervous every time Mark says clock now. Alyssa, so do I. Sean Gillespie, Foles' 23rd team. Still wish him the best. I do as well. PJ chiming in here. I was initially peeved when he fired back with the Astros winning the World Series. I know sometimes if we didn't live in the state, grow up in the state, we don't have a good idea of the geography of the state. Houston and Dallas are like 3.5 hours away. Houston and San Antonio about 3.5 hours away. Houston and Austin, Texas, about 3.5 hours away. I've actually made that drive from Houston to Austin, and Austin is as awesome as people say it is. It's a great town. Very interesting. And yeah, great live music, great barbecue. Franklin's. Did have Franklin's. Franklin's was amazing. Had the brisket. Fantastic. The next day, I lost little leftovers, made some nachos with it. Fantastic. But yeah, any jab with reminding me the Astros won the World Series is not fun. Why do fans care about the MVP? I only care about championships. Dak, fair point, and good for you. Ultimately, I think most people care about championships more than the MVP. Let's just get that out of the way. But I think it is always great to know that your guy is the MVP. If you don't win a championship, you get a trophy. It's not a parade. It's nowhere near as significant. It's nowhere near as big a deal. But I feel like you want to watch your quarterback and go, that guy's the best at what they do right now. And an MVP is a nice cherry on top of anything that you win during the regular season. It's going to be during a season. But yes, I think everyone agrees as far as the MVP award just being something nice to have, as opposed to. Plus, if you have an MVP quarterback, people might look at you and be like, "Oh, they got the MVP quarterback, so they can win a Super Bowl." Sean Gillespie, I do agree with Ochoa on the Eagles learning from losing to the boys, but I don't like it. I agree. Mike D. Parsons is a complete team and system linebacker. Mike, that's hilarious. Appreciate you guys in the chat. You guys are awesome as per usual. Let's get to the morning rush brought to you by Sky Motorcars, SkyMotorcars.com. Once again, 76ers off tonight. They're back at it tomorrow against the Clippers, 7 o'clock tip-off in South Philadelphia. The Flyers will look to do something they haven't done since forever. The Flyers will look to get back-to-back wins. What? For the first time since November 5th, when they take on the Maple Leafs tonight, north of the border in Toronto. That's a 2 o'clock. Did I say tonight? 2 o'clock. That's a 2 o'clock puck drop for the Flyers and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Toronto, one of the best teams in the NHL, 27-6. Flyers coming to town north of the border, 11-15-7. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. This is the far. Oh, no, wait. Oh, geez. Hold on. Franco Harris. I want to give a word on Franco Harris before I get out on a happier note. Franco Harris passed away yesterday. All-time great running back in NFL history. You guys know him as a Pittsburgh Steelers running back, of course, immaculate reception. If you've never been to the Pittsburgh airport, there is a statue of Franco Harris. I've passed it many times in that pose, catching the immaculate reception. All-around class guy. Every way he handled himself on and off the field, people admired. I had two unfortunate instances with Franco Harris personally. I interviewed him twice when I was on WIP, and it was about Joe Paterno and the Jerry Sandusky Penn State sex scandal. He was campaigning for Joe Paterno to get his job back with Penn State. Obviously, a very unpopular opinion at the time. We did not see eye to eye on that, but I give Franco Harris a lot of credit for this. He had a belief. He did not get angry about the belief. He did not belittle other people about the belief that he had, that his old coach should get his job back at Penn State. And at a time where it was really difficult for people to have somewhat of an educated and respectful conversation about it, he was able to do that. And we didn't agree. We didn't see eye to eye. He was respectful of my opinion. I was respectful of his and his personal decision with his personal relationship with Joe Paterno. We interviewed. He sat down and did an interview with me on 2 separate occasions over the phone, and I'll always remember the way he handled that. Something that could have been, even while I'm telling him flat out, I don't agree with you. I think this is wrong. There's no coming back from this. He said, well, here's why I think that you should, or people should think that Joe Paterno should get his job back. He was very, I will say this, he was very respectful about the whole thing. That was my personal interaction with him. He at least conducted himself like a gentleman, even though he was very passionate about the subject. From everyone I've talked to, who obviously knew him outside of just conversations regarding a very unfortunate thing, a horrendous thing, obviously, they all said nothing but glowing things about him, and he'll be missed in the NFL world, of course. And to all my friends that are Pittsburgh Steelers fans, I am very sorry for your loss. On a lighter note, aside from the Eagles Pro Bowl announcements coming out yesterday, of course, Washington had a couple of Pro Bowlers as well. One was Jonathan Allen. Okay, not pretty obvious. The other was Tress Way, their punter, and another was their starting now special teams guy returner, Jeremy Reeves. Jeremy Reeves was actually signed by the Eagles 4 years ago and made it through camp and got cut before the season started. I think he got cut late August, and was an undrafted free agent that the Eagles signed in 2018. And here he is. If you haven't seen this yet, this is pretty emotional. If you haven't seen this yet, here is Jeremy Reeves being told that he made the Pro Bowl by Ron Rivera. Check this out.
Congratulations. You're the Pro Bowl special teams guy. You're the starter. You earned it, young man. Everything you've done. And I know your mom would be proud. You earned it, young man.
Appreciate it, Coach.
Yo. He wouldn't stop.
How about that, huh? There's not a lot of class in that Washington organization, but if there is any, 100% of it is Ron Rivera. I'll just say that. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Talk to you guys tomorrow. See you.